Hello, and welcome to the Simply Business Interview Podcast, a podcast created by business owners for business owners. I am your host, John Jennings. And I believe that most business owners are working way too hard for much too little. And one of our issues is that we overcomplexify things. I believe the answers are almost always within us or within our reach. I like to say that I'm a simple man with simple ideas. So welcome to Simply Business. All right, today I am joined by Michael DeLon, who is the founder and president of Paperback Experts. And in full disclosure, usually I'm sitting down with people and I've just met them. I mean, we're just but Michael and I actually did meet a few weeks ago, and we're like, man, we just got to do this. We're kindred spirits in a lot of ways. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing more about his story and his business, and I know you will as well. So Michael, thank you for joining us. Let's kick it off as I do with just a little background and who you are and what you do.
Right, John. Thanks for letting me be here. It's going to be a fun conversation. What you need to know about me is I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Been married since 1990 to my beautiful wife Jill, and we've got 4 kids: 2 biological sons who are grown, married, out of the house, and 2 daughters who are adopted through 8 years of foster care. They're almost 16 and 13 now. Yeah. So my background, John, when Jill and I got married in 90, first 5 years of our marriage were like this. We are complete opposites. And she and I both grew up in church, but nobody ever taught us how to be married. And so after 5 years of conflict, we went to a family life weekend to remember marriage conference. And we sat in a ballroom with 1,000 people, and they shared God's blueprints for marriage. I didn't know God had blueprints. So we grabbed the blueprints, we started applying them. Our marriage got better through the 90s. That's when we had our 2 sons. And back then I was working in Christian radio as a salesperson, selling, advertising to small business owners. And that's where I learned marketing for business owners during the 90s. At the end of the 90s, God led us out of Christian radio to a startup.com back when Amazon was just getting started. And that company lasted about 2 years. They were ahead of their time. They went bankrupt. And so I was standing in my living room praying to God one day saying, what am I supposed to do now, God? And he said, Michael, I want you in a ministry to marriages, and I want you at Family Life, that ministry that changed our marriage. So I said, okay. And we raised support for 2 years as missionaries, as part of Campus Crusade for Christ. And then we moved from Indiana, which is where we were living, down to Little Rock, Arkansas, world headquarters for Family Life. And we started serving in the ministry. I got in the radio department, and we climbed the corporate ladder. So 6 years later, I'm serving on the leadership team of this worldwide ministry. And everything's amazing until they start going through corporate reorganizations. And so the 3rd reorganizational chart comes out, and John, my name is no longer on the leadership team. And so they start shuffling me around the ministry to do what needs to be done. And that began a 2-year, I call it a prison term, when I was at a
Oh, I can relate so much.
Man, a job I hated at a ministry I loved. So after 2 years, I just got fed up. I talked to my wife. I prayed. I said, God, I got to get out of this place. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I really want to go help business owners with marketing because they struggle with it, and I just love it. And he said, okay, go. So on January 1st of 2013, I escaped from prison. I left the ministry, started a marketing consulting firm. I had one client, helped him break through some barriers. He'd refer me to you, John. I'd come and I'd say, hey, I can help you grow your business. We'd meet. We'd have an amazing conversation. And you'd say, Michael, this all sounds really good. Tell me, what have you been doing in the last few years? Who else have you helped? And I said, well, I've helped build marriages and families at Family Life. And you say, Michael, that's honorable. Way to go. Look at the time, Michael. I got another meeting coming in. I couldn't get a client, John, for anything. And so I went to my church one day, paced the hallways on the 2nd floor. I can remember it as if it was yesterday. I said, God, how do I help John? Because I know I can. And God gave me this idea, John, to take all of my ideas and put them in a book. And so I said, okay. So back in 2013, I published my first book on marketing. And then I would call you. I'd set an appointment. I would mail a copy of my book to you, John. And a week later, I'd walk in your office for our meeting, and there it was. My book was on your desk, dog-eared, highlighted, underlined. You'd read my book. And in that meeting, you'd say, now, Michael, in your book, you said, how do you help me do that? And you hired me, and I started gaining clients. Now, John, the only thing that changed was the fact that I published a book.
Right.
In your mind, when you got a copy of my book, I instantly became an expert. that changed everything for my business and my life. I started gaining clients. And I thought, why don't business owners do this? Well, you know how hard it is to write a book? I mean, there's a lot
I
to
do.
it. So I created a process that allows business owners and experts now to create a book without writing a word. And then I teach them our marketing systems of how to use your book to gain more clients. And I get to serve clients all across the nation. And that's what we do in our business, Paperback Experts. So that was a long story, but that's who I am.
That's awesome. And you probably answered the next 3 questions I usually answer. I mean, usually,
I love it. That's great.
What inspired you? Oh, wait, I can't ask that one. You know what?
Well,
but no, and this is where, our listeners know that those that know me know we're kindred spirits for a lot of ways, person of faith as well. And God led me down a similar kind of path. And I use the phrase handcuffs, use the phrase prison. We both survived. I was at the 3rd iteration of around the layoffs when my name showed up on, so I mean, they're just, and just 3 years apart too, right around the same time. So there's just a lot of parallels, but let's dive into some things about how you're impacting people. Tell me a story about, and you can leave names out and stuff, but just tell me a story about somebody, that this just has just blown their business out of the water. I'd love to hear those types of success stories.
Yeah. So I'll just pick on Brad just because he's I mean, I got dozens of them, right? But Brad's a financial advisor up in Branson, Missouri. He was on the radio. He was on like 1 or 2 radio stations, and he was giving away, as it's called action, he was giving away a book, but it was somebody else's book. Right. And it just never worked. I mean, it worked okay. But he came to me. He's like, Michael, I've got to change everything. I'm going to start writing my own radio programs, but I have to write my own book. And Brad's got an amazing story. And he used to be a youth pastor, and then his wife left him, and I mean, it's just rags to riches. But he's a man of character. And we told that all of his story in the book. And he started doing radio, and kept doing radio, and he started giving away his own book. And we positioned him and named his book "Safe Money Matters." Because Brad is a financial advisor who deals with safe money, annuities, life insurance. That's what he does, and he helps people. And so everything around Brad is safe money. So we branded his book "Safe Money." Now what Brad does is on his radio show, that's his only call to action. Get a free copy of my book. If you're listening to me, you like what I said, just get a free copy. Read about who I am. Read about my strategy. So he has callers calling in and say, I'd like a free copy. Okay, I'll mail it to you. So he mails a free copy of his book out. People read his book. And then they walk into his office, book in hand, dog-eared, highlighted, underlined, sticky notes saying, Brad, I read this. Help me understand this. How does this work? And he says, I don't have first appointments anymore. I have second and third appointments the first time because they know me. They trust me because they've read my book. His business went from about, I don't know, he's doing 3 or 4 million a year. Last year, I think he did 35 million. And he published his book back in 2014. So this is almost 10 years now. He came back and did a second book with me. But his business has just continually grown because he's been consistent with his radio program, mailing his book out for free. I tell authors all the time, don't try to get rich selling your book on Amazon. It ain't going to work. It's on Amazon for credibility. People can buy it.
Right.
But you want to put your book in somebody's hands, sign it to them. They'll never throw it away. It gives them an opportunity to really bond with you. So that Brad is one of our case studies. He's just a great guy, but his business has been transformative. And I've got him on video 2 or 3 times just saying, I would hate to think where my business would be today if I never did the book.
Yeah.
Because it's been that impactful for him.
Wow. That's awesome. And you're making me rethink. As a reason I think I'm going to learn a lot from you. Looking forward to getting this. My practice has been set up an appointment, take my book and hand it to them, but your idea of mailing it ahead of time, gosh, the U.S. Postal Service has been around for a while, right? But we don't think about that.
It's serious, and 100% open rate when you get in the mailbox, right? And nobody does direct mail anymore right now, except like Geico does. But think about this. All right, so let's take this to the next level, right? You're going to mail your book to them. You're going to sign it to them. It's sacrilegious in our culture to throw a book away anyway, so put it in their hand.
Right.
and put a note in it, say, hey, John and Molly, I'm looking forward to meeting with you. I
Yeah.
just enjoy a copy of my book. Mail it to them. Your color, your branding colors are kind of blue, right?
Yeah.
Go to
And my
Amazon.
book's blue. There it is.
There it is. Beautiful. Go to Amazon, buy bubble wrap mailers for books that are blue.
Yeah.
Stick it in there. And then when you call them, you mail it to them, you call them and say, hey, John and Molly, I was just calling to see if that big blue package that I mailed to you, did it arrive or did the mailman lose it? And they're going to say, oh, no, I got it. Okay, great. I'd love for you to read that before we. So if you find reasons to call people because you've mailed your book to them.
Mm-hmm.
How many people do we not follow up with because we're like, I don't know what to say? How
Yeah.
about get a copy of my book? How about did you read a copy of my book? How about do you have questions about what I wrote in my book? How about right? I mean, it just goes on up because you're there to serve. So
Right. No, that's awesome. So I know one of the things that's unique about you is you have a very creative way of helping people who don't have the skills to write a book to write their book. And I don't know how much if that's all secret sauce or whether you're
we give it all away. Right?
I love this idea.
Yeah, one of my phrases that I use a lot of times, John, never write a book. And I'm a publisher. And the reason I say that is I think you need to speak to write your book. So we created our process as speak to write. I've got a dozen writers on my team. And what we do is after we get your crystal clear message, like your baby is ugly, isn't that the name of your book?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we get a great title and theme. And then one of my writers comes to the table and through just a few Zoom calls, they interview you, they talk with you, and you actually speak your book because you have all of the content in your head for your book. You just don't want to sit down and type it out. You want to communicate. And my clients are experts at what they do, and they're communicators. So we just let you communicate to my writer who records everything. And then the writer takes everything you've spoken to us and they massage your words into your book. So it sounds like you. It has your vernacular, your tone, your voice. Everything's you. Because when somebody reads your book, I want them to hear your voice. So that when they hear your podcast or get on an appointment with you, it's the same person.
Right.
So it takes less, our process, we've dialed it in, it takes less than 24 clock hours of your time. It takes us a few months to get it done. But we work with busy business owners. And so we get your book done in 24 hours of your time, publish you to Amazon and Kindle, make you an Amazon best-selling author for credibility. Then the fun begins when we teach you how to use your book to gain clients and get referrals.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I mean, I love to write. So, I mean, I actually did enjoy the process of writing. What I didn't enjoy was the process of writing it the second time after my editors got hold of it. And then all the polishing and then all the stuff you do and then all the stuff to get it out. And then you find a mistake at the first, when you're going through and reading your first printed copy that's just been put on Amazon, and all that. So there's a number of reasons, and I hear people all the time. The reason I think I'm gonna hopefully be able to refer several people to you is I hear people all the time go, man, I'd love to write a book, but I just don't have time, or I'm not a good writer, or I'm whatever. So that's a really cool process you have. So you've got a bunch of writers on staff. You've got you brought your son into the company, which that's interesting. So my son was actually my primary editor. He's in the communications, public relations space. He has way more technical knowledge about writing, than I do. Cause he would go, do you want to use the Chicago format or this or on the comma, there's a term for the comma after the and, whether you use it or not, he would ask me these and I'm like, I don't care. And he said, I don't care either. Just be consistent. You're one way on one chapter and another way on another chapter. I said, yeah, because I probably wrote those 3 months apart.
I didn't even know there was a way. Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%.
So anyway, I enjoyed working with my son, and I give him all the credit in the book for how much he helped me. But you're actually, working with your son in the business. Tell me about the father-son dynamic. That's an interesting one.
It has been so good. So Caleb, my eldest son, he's 28. He's my chief operating officer now. he helped me actually build the business from the beginning. He was with me as I was ideating this and starting off. And then he went to seminary and was a youth pastor, so that he was 5 years away from me, still kind of a consultant because he knows the business as well as I do. Then he came back about 3 years ago and has grown from marketing director to chief operating officer and chief financial officer. I love it, man. He and I meet twice a week in our we run on Traction EOS, and so we meet twice a week. And it's just been so fun, John, to watch him grow. So he's 28, right? He's been with me, and he's been in the pastorate, a youth pastor. Yeah. That's it. And so I've been able to put him in coaching programs with me and watch him grow. And he's a self-learner, so he'll go out and learn things and bring it to me. And we run on EOS because of him. He read the book. He's like, Daddy, we need to do this. I'm like, okay. The dynamic is really good. Here's what's very interesting, though. I've had to learn to submit to him in the areas of the business that I've given him responsibility for.
Yeah.
He's over not just marketing, but operations. So when you become a client of mine and you would ask me, hey, Michael, where's my book in the process? My answer is, John, I don't know. Caleb knows because I've stayed out of it. And if I make a change in one of our systems or something, he'll say, Daddy, stop that. That affects 7 other people down the line. Oh. So I've learned that I need to, as a leader, I've given him responsibilities and I need to stay out of it, even though it's my business. Well, no, it really isn't. It's God's business. It's our family business. And so I've learned to submit to my 28-year-old son in lots of places. And that took some time. He and I, one more thing, he and I are opposites in lots of ways. We're very similar, very opposite. We were doing quarterly planning 2 or 3 months ago. And we were looking at, client flow and what would be good, how many clients a month do we need to get now? And he had an epiphany because he said, Dad, if we just got 4 or 5 clients a month, every month, I'd just be happy. And I looked at him and said, Caleb, I wouldn't. He's like, really? I said, no, I want to do that, but I want to grow and I want to build the marketing aspects of it. And I want to do that. Caleb is very just, let's build the machine so it's amazing and everybody gets a wonderful experience. And that is great for Caleb. Well, I want that, but I want to grow and I want to make it. And he's like, I never really connected those dots. And so having time one-on-one, because he's in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm in Kentucky. So we do everything on Zoom. But having a day one-on-one with him gave him conversations that never come up on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
It was a real turning point for him to go, oh, I'm starting to understand now why we're so different. It's like, oh, that's okay. We are different, but that's a good...
differences are great. I think some of the best teams I've seen are very diverse in a lot of ways, including their styles.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've been married for, 37 years to a woman who's complete opposite me on the behavior chart. I mean, we are 180 degrees opposite, but it works,
It does. Yeah. So Jill and I are that way. I used to tell people, Jill and I were like oil and water. We just never mixed. And I changed that after a few years of marriage because we've been married since 90. I said, you know what? We used to be oil and water. Now we are hand in glove.
There you go.
We're opposites.
Yeah.
So they work
chocolate and peanut butter. It just goes together.
It does. Yeah.
Well, I always like to ask this question because we love talking about all the great things, all the wonderful things. Tell us about, man, one of those challenges. You've been in business for over 10 years. I know you've hit some challenges. Obviously, everybody hit COVID, but outside of COVID, what can you share about a challenge and kind of how you overcome it? Because that's really what my book, Your Baby's Ugly, is about. It's about the fact that you have ugly baby moments. Yeah. And we figure out how to fix them and we move on.
Dude, I could pick from a list, but here's the big one. And this happened, I don't know, 4 years into our business, 4 or 5 years into our business. Caleb was helping me do some things and we hired a marketing consultant because I'm great at marketing, John. I mean, God has just given me the gift. I love it for other people. I am too close to my company to do it for my company. So I have marketing coaches that speak into my business. Yeah. So a few years ago, we hired a marketing coach, company, whatever, consultants, and he came in and he started tweaking things and we were paying him. And then he's like, okay, well, we need to do this advertising, this marketing. So we were paying that. And it just wasn't, the results weren't coming in. And after about 6 months or so, I just got this feeling. I'm like, something's not working right. So I created a spreadsheet, John. It was called the Paperback Experts Go Broke Date spreadsheet. And and I started
I know
looking,
where this is going.
dude, money in the bank and what was happening. And I said, I probably got 6 to 9 months. And I built the spreadsheet and I went, I got 3 months.
Yeah.
And so I had the conversations with my son and my wife. I said, we need to eliminate expenses real fast.
Right.
I looked, and guess what? The number one expense was, John,
Yeah.
myself. So I had to lay
Oh,
myself off. I laid myself off of my own company. Caleb was working somewhere else. He was a youth pastor, but he kind of jumped in part-time to keep it afloat. I went and got a job, a job to provide
yeah.
for my family. And through 9 months of getting rid of the marketing guy, stopping that expense too. But God provided some things, helped us realign some things. And 9 months later, God brought some clients and things. I was able to step back into my business. And
Hmm.
that was probably the biggest thing. I call that going to prison as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
that was
I had a
amazing.
similar experience that are, well, I've done that with my business at times when I see money going the wrong way. I go, okay, how long is this runway? Right. But it's about the same time, actually, our church had a similar kind of thing happen where had a sudden, bunch of cash had to be spent for some, credible reasons. But suddenly it's like, oh, wow, that savings just got depleted. And at the time, we weren't covering our expenses. And it was the same kind of thing. I did the math and I'm like, okay, 6 months, we're going to be in trouble. And I'm, an elder, I'm on the board, we're having these conversations and I'm looking around the room and they're all just like, we'll figure it out next month. And I finally I did I don't, this is not my style of leadership typically, but every once in a while I'll just, it's kind of the your baby's ugly thing. I just said, pick one. I pointed at the ministers, said, pick one.
Yeah,
One of them's one of them's gonna have to go.
that's
Which,
right.
and that just that kind of shock factor of the moment went, oh, okay, we're actually going to run out of money, and the only way right now is to let somebody go because we don't. So we did what you did. We looked and prioritized and took some things out,
Yep.
and God provided, and we're. It didn't take long to get out of that situation, but it took that kind of shock factor
Well,
that you sometimes and every business owner listening to this, if you're new, that's probably going to happen to you at some point. It probably is, and it usually is, especially in that year or two down the road when you hit that first big bump, you lose that big client, you have that unexpected expense, and yeah, it could be it could
well,
be shocking.
it's a lot like, Dave Ramsey talks about putting 6 months of savings away or something like that. I think business owners
Mhm.
need to do the exact same thing. We've got, because of Caleb, my son, we now have a storehouse. He has some fancy name for it, but it's a storehouse of cash that's just
Mhm.
sitting there with 6 months of our operating expenses. So,
Yeah.
and we want to push out to 9 months,
Wow.
just so when something happens, when the market turns, when COVID, we're okay.
Yeah.
And that is a discipline that Caleb brought to my company. And I would encourage every business owner to have that discipline to put some away every month and build your own storehouse. It's the Joseph principle, right? He
Yeah.
saved 7 years for something that was going to last for 7 years. And it's the same thing. We just forget about it. We stick our head in the sand and say, well, I don't know what happened to me.
Yeah.
I bet. So that'd be
Yeah.
my counsel. Put some away for that rainy day because it's coming.
Well, that's some great advice for uh, my listeners. I know that we've got. I usually end with that, but so let me ask it this way: um, somebody who's thinking about taking that leap. You were in prison for 3 years, and for those that just started listening, we don't mean literal prison. we don't want Michael to get a bad reputation out there. So listen from the beginning. But you 2013, you took that leap of faith and launched your business. So I know, I mean, I talk to people literally. I probably talk to two people a week that are wanting to do something like that. They're thinking about going out, and I always try to get a feel for whether they're ready for it, right? And that sort of thing. But what advice would you give as somebody? I mean, you're in the critical, I mean, small percentage of people that, I mean, you've been in business for over 10 years now. That's a very, very small percentage of startups. So what would be that top advice for someone who's thinking about taking that leap?
Yeah. Number one, have the support of your spouse. If it weren't for
Amen.
Jill, thing would not have happened, right?
Yeah.
Number two, make sure you've got a runway of cash, because cash is king. Revenue is king. Cash flow is king. And if you don't have cash flow that matches what your current job is or close to it, don't do it yet. Get that cash flow, get some clients on your belt, and make sure, because that's going to bring so much stress and pressure into your life if you're not there. And that's two. And number three, if you're not good at marketing, find somebody who is, because marketing's where the money's made. You can be the best plumber in the world, but if nobody knows about you, right? So make sure you've got a good marketing engine in place to do what you're great at. But yeah, support of your spouse is by far number one, but then money in the bank really helps.
Yeah. And those first two are what, I don't disagree with the third one at all either, but those first two are usually my first two that I give as well.
That's good. It just, yeah, after doing it and talking with enough people, you go, yeah, you know, it's just not worth chasing the dream if it's going to ruin your family. It's not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Michael, I know people are gonna want to learn more about you, connect with you. I'm gonna share your contact with so many people, but just so we can get, how's the best way of getting in touch with you or your company to learn more?
Yeah, our website's the hub of everything. It's paperbackexpert.com. And from there, you can find everything about our company. You can schedule a call with me. I've got a lot of free trainings and resources there. Paperbackexpert.com. And
I would agree with that. I've been stalking and reading a lot of your stuff for the last week or so. So I've really enjoyed this. I know we went way over time. That's okay. I don't care. It's worth every minute, and look forward to more conversations with you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, brother. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please share or like it on whatever platform you use. You can find me on social media. On most platforms, I'm John K. Jennings. My first book is also available. Your Baby is Ugly tells you about 10 truths that business owners need to hear, but often won't, and how to overcome them. You can find it on Amazon. Just search for Your Baby is Ugly. And be watching for our next episode, where I'll interview another business owner who will share their stories and insights into what it's like to create a great business.